Malaysian flight mysteries, vanished jets without trace. In the annals of aviation history, few events have captured the world's attention and imagination quite like the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines flight MH370. On the morning of March 8, 2014, a Boeing 777-200ER carrying 239 passengers and crew vanished from radar screens mid-flight, leaving behind a trail of confusion, grief, and unanswered questions that persist more than a decade later. But MH370 is not the only Malaysian flight to vanish without a trace. Decades earlier, another Malaysia Airlines aircraft, flight MH2003, disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Though it has been overshadowed by the scale and global impact of MH370, these two incidents, separated by nearly 3 decades, share a haunting commonality. They involve commercial jets operated by the same airline, vanishing without warning, leaving no clear evidence of their fate, and confounding investigators, experts, and the families of the missing. To explore these mysteries is to delve into a world of aviation technology, human error, geopolitical tensions, and the limits of modern science, a world where even the most advanced systems can fail, and where the truth can remain elusive, buried beneath the depths of the ocean, or lost in the vastness of the sky. This narrative seeks to unravel the stories of these vanished jets, examining the facts, the theories, the investigations, and the enduring impact of these tragedies on aviation, on the families of the missing, and on the global consciousness. Aviation, by its very nature, is a pursuit built on precision, safety, and predictability. Commercial aircraft are equipped with sophisticated systems designed to track their location, communicate with ground control, and ensure the safety of those on board. From transponders that broadcast the aircraft's position to black boxes that record every detail of the flight, modern aviation technology is intended to leave no room for mystery. Yet the cases of MH370 and MH2003 defy this logic, proving that even in an age of satellites, radar, and advanced surveillance, a large commercial jet can simply vanish, leaving no distress signal, no debris, no clear explanation for its disappearance. These mysteries challenge our understanding of aviation safety, forcing experts to confront the limitations of technology and the unpredictable nature of human behavior. They also raise profound questions about accountability, transparency, and the responsibility of airlines and governments to provide answers to those who have lost loved ones. As we explore each case in detail, we will uncover the timeline of events, the key evidence or lack thereof, the theories that have emerged, and the lasting legacy of these vanished jets. To begin, we must first contextualize the world of aviation in the decades preceding these disappearances, as well as the role of Malaysia Airlines in the global aviation industry. Malaysia Airlines, founded in 1947 as Malayan Airways, grew to become one of Asia's most prominent carriers, operating flights to more than 100 destinations worldwide. By the 1990s, the airline had established a reputation for safety, though it would later face challenges in the 2000s and 2010s, including financial difficulties and safety concerns. The first of the two vanished flights, MH2003, occurred in 1995, a time when aviation technology was less advanced than it is today, but still equipped with the basic systems needed to track and communicate with aircraft. The second, MH370, disappeared in 2014, at a time when satellite tracking, radar technology, and aircraft monitoring systems were far more sophisticated, making its disappearance all the more confounding. Both flights were operating on routine routes, with experienced crews, and no indication of trouble before they vanished. Yet, despite the advancements in technology between 1995 and 2014, both mysteries remain unsolved, suggesting that some forces, whether human, environmental, or technical, can outpace even the most advanced systems. Let us first turn to the lesser known of the two mysteries, Malaysia Airlines Flight MH2003. On December 18, 1995, Flight MH2003 departed from Kota Kinabalu International Airport in Sabah, Malaysia, bound for Kuching International Airport in Sarawak, Malaysia. The flight was a short domestic journey, scheduled to take just over an hour, with 49 passengers and 5 crew members on board. The aircraft was a Fokker 50, a turboprop plane commonly used for short-haul flights in Southeast Asia. The weather on the day of the flight was reported as fair, with no significant storms or turbulence predicted along the route. The flight departed Kota Kinabalu at 10:35 a.m. local time, and initial communications with Air Traffic Control, ATC, were normal. At approximately 11:00 a.m., the pilot contacted ATC in Kuching to report that the flight was approaching the Kuching area and would be landing shortly. This was the last communication from Flight MH2003. Moments later, the aircraft vanished from radar screens, and no further contact was received. Despite an immediate search and rescue operation, no trace of the plane, its passengers, or its crew was ever found. The disappearance of MH2003 sent shockwaves through Malaysia's aviation industry, as it was the first major disappearance of a Malaysia Airlines flight in decades. The search operation for MH2003 was extensive, covering the area between Kota Kinabalu and Kuching, including the South China Sea and the mountainous regions of Borneo. Search teams included aircraft from the Malaysian Air Force, the Royal Malaysian Navy, and civilian search and rescue organizations, as well as boats and ground teams. The search focused on areas where the plane might have crashed, including coastal regions, jungles, and the open sea. However, despite weeks of searching, no debris, no oil slicks, no personal belongings, and no remains were found. The lack of evidence made it nearly impossible for investigators to determine what had happened to the flight. The official investigation into MH2003 was launched by the Malaysian Department of Civil Aviation, DCA. But it quickly hit a wall due to the absence of key evidence, most notably the aircraft's black boxes, which contain the flight data recorder, FDR, and cockpit voice recorder, CVR. Without these devices, investigators could not access critical information about the flight's final moments, such as the pilot's communications, the aircraft systems, or any mechanical failures that might have occurred. In the absence of concrete evidence, several theories emerged to explain the disappearance of MH2003. One of the most prominent theories was that the aircraft had suffered a sudden mechanical failure, such as an engine malfunction or structural failure, which caused it to crash into the sea or the jungle. The Fokker 50, while generally reliable, had been involved in several accidents in the past, some of which were attributed to mechanical issues. However, there was no evidence to support this theory. No debris was found in the areas where a mechanical failure might have caused a crash, and the pilot had not reported any mechanical problems before the last communication. Another theory suggested that the flight had been caught in an unexpected storm or severe turbulence, which caused the aircraft to lose control and crash. While the weather was reported as fair, it is possible that a sudden, localized storm or microburst could have affected the flight. Again, however, there was no evidence to support this, as no weather stations in the area reported any severe weather at the time of the disappearance. A third theory proposed that the flight had been the victim of foul play, such as a hijacking or a bomb. However, there were no demands for ransom, no claims of responsibility, and no evidence of a hijacking, such as a distress signal or a change in the flight's route. Additionally, the Fokker 50 was a small aircraft, making it less likely to be a target for hijackers or terrorists. As the investigation into MH2003 continued, it became clear that the lack of evidence would make it impossible to determine the exact cause of the disappearance. In 1997, more than a year after the flight vanished, the Malaysian DCA released its final report on MH2003, concluding that the aircraft had crashed into the sea or jungle, but the exact location and cause could not be determined due to the absence of debris and other evidence. The report listed the cause of the disappearance as unknown, a frustrating conclusion for the families of the 54 missing people. For many of these families, the lack of closure was devastating. They had no bodies to bury, no answers to their questions, and no way to move on from the loss of their loved ones. The disappearance of MH2003 was quickly overshadowed by other aviation tragedies, and it soon faded from the global consciousness. However, for the families of the missing, the mystery remained alive, a painful reminder of the fragility of life and the limits of human knowledge. Decades later, as the world grappled with the disappearance of MH370, many would revisit the story of MH2003. No noting the eerie similarities between the two cases and wondering if there was a connection. Fast forward to March 8, 2014, a date that would become etched in the global memory as the day Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 vanished. Unlike MH2003, which was a short domestic flight, MH370 was a long-haul international flight bound from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, KLIA, in Malaysia, to Beijing Capital International Airport in China. The aircraft was a Boeing 777-200ER, one of the most reliable and widely used commercial jets in the world, with a proven safety record. The flight carried 227 passengers from 14 different countries, including 153 Chinese citizens and 38 Malaysians, as well as 12 crew members. The pilot in command was Captain Zahiri Ahmed Shah, a 53-year-old with more than 18,000 hours of flying experience, and the co-pilot was First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, a 27-year-old with 2,763 hours of experience. The flight was scheduled to depart KLIA at 12:35 a.m. local time and arrive in Beijing at 6:30 a.m. local time, a flight duration of approximately 5 hours and 55 minutes. The weather on the day of the flight was clear, with no significant turbulence or storms predicted along the route. Everything appeared to be routine until the flight vanished from radar. The timeline of MH370's disappearance is a critical piece of the mystery, as it reveals a series of unusual events that have puzzled investigators for years. At 12:35 a.m., MH370 departed KLIA, taking off smoothly and climbing to its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. At 1:07 a.m., the flight entered Vietnamese airspace, and the pilot contacted Ho Chi Minh City Air Traffic Control, reporting that the flight was maintaining 35,000 feet and heading north toward Beijing. This was the last normal communication from the flight. At 1:19 a.m., Ho Chi Minh City ATC attempted to contact MH370 to hand over control to Guangzhou Air Traffic Control, but there was no response. At the same time, the flight's transponder, an electronic device that broadcasts the aircraft's position, altitude, and speed to radar, stopped transmitting. As a result, MH370 vanished from primary radar screens, which track aircraft by bouncing radio waves off their surfaces. However, the flight was still detectable by secondary radar, which relies on the transponder signal, until 1:21 a.m., when it completely disappeared from all radar systems. What happened in those 12 minutes between 1:07 a.m. and 1:19 a.m. remains one of the greatest mysteries of the case. In the hours following the disappearance, confusion reigned. Malaysia Airlines initially announced that the flight had lost contact with ATC at 2:40 a.m., a delay that would later spark criticism from families and experts who accused the airline and the Malaysian government of mishandling the early hours of the crisis. As news of the disappearance spread, search and rescue operations were launched, initially focusing on the area where the flight was last detected, off the coast of Vietnam in the South China Sea. However, as more information emerged, it became clear that the flight had not crashed in the South China Sea. Instead, investigators discovered that after the transponder was turned off, the aircraft had made a sharp turn to the west, flying back over Malaysia and heading toward the Strait of Malacca. This information was derived from military radar data, which had tracked the aircraft for several hours after it had vanished from civilian radar. The military radar showed that MH370 flew west across the Malay Peninsula, then turned south, flying over the Indian Ocean before disappearing completely at approximately 2:22 a.m., about 200 nautical miles northwest of Penang, Malaysia. The discovery that MH370 had deviated from its planned route was a game changer, as it suggested that the disappearance was not an accident, but possibly a deliberate act. This led to a dramatic expansion of the search area, from the South China Sea to the Indian Ocean, one of the largest and deepest bodies of water in the world. The search operation for MH370 would become the largest and most expensive in aviation history, involving more than 20 countries, dozens of ships, aircraft, and underwater vehicles, and spanning an area of more than 120,000 square kilometers. Despite these efforts, no trace of the aircraft was found in the initial search areas. It was not until July 29, 2015, more than a year after the disappearance, that the first piece of debris from MH370 was found on the coast of Réunion Island, a French territory in the Indian Ocean. The debris was identified as a flaperon, a component of the aircraft's wing, and subsequent tests confirmed that it came from MH370. Over the next several years, more than 30 pieces of debris were found on the coasts of Réunion, Madagascar, Mozambique, South Africa, and other Indian Ocean islands, all confirmed to be from MH370. However, none of these debris pieces provided definitive clues about the location of the main wreckage or the cause of the disappearance. The search for MH370's black boxes was a top priority, as they were believed to hold the key to understanding what happened in the final moments of the flight. The FDR records critical flight data, such as altitude, speed, engine performance, and control inputs, while the CVR records all communications in the cockpit, including conversations between the pilots and any sounds that might indicate a mechanical failure or emergency. Black boxes are designed to survive crashes and remain buoyant in water, emitting a ping signal for up to 30 days. However, by the time the search for the black boxes began in earnest, the 30-day window had already passed, making it nearly impossible to detect the ping signal. Despite this, search teams used underwater sonar and remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, to scan the seabed in the area where the aircraft was last detected by military radar. The search continued for more than 2 years, covering more than 120,000 square kilometers of seabed, but no trace of the black boxes or the main wreckage was found. In January 2017, the official search was suspended, with investigators stating that they had exhausted all possible search areas and that no new information had emerged to guide further searches. This decision was met with outrage from the families of the missing, who accused the governments involved of giving up too soon. In the absence of concrete evidence, dozens of theories have emerged to explain the disappearance of MH370, ranging from the plausible to the bizarre. One of the most widely discussed theories is that the pilot, Captain Zahiri Ahmed Shah, deliberately hijacked the aircraft and crashed it into the Indian Ocean. This theory is based on several pieces of evidence: the aircraft's sudden deviation from its route, the intentional turning off of the transponder and other communication systems, and the fact that Captain Zahiri had no known motive for suicide or hijacking. Some investigators have noted that Captain Zahiri was a passionate pilot who had built a flight simulator in his home, and that he had practiced landing procedures on remote islands in the Indian Ocean, fueling speculation that he had planned the disappearance in advance. However, there is no direct evidence to support this theory, and many of Captain Zahiri's friends and colleagues have defended him, describing him as a responsible and dedicated pilot with no history of mental illness or distress. The co-pilot, First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, has also been the subject of speculation, but there is no evidence to suggest that he was involved in any deliberate act. Another prominent theory is that the aircraft suffered a catastrophic mechanical failure, such as a fire or an electrical system malfunction, which caused the pilots to lose control and the aircraft to crash into the Indian Ocean. Proponents of this theory point to the fact that the Boeing 777 has a history of electrical system issues, including problems with the transponder and communication systems. They also note that a fire in the cargo hold or cockpit could have incapacitated the crew and caused the aircraft to deviate from its route before crashing. However, there is no evidence to support this theory. No debris found suggests a fire, and the aircraft's engines were functioning normally until the transponder was turned off. Additionally, the Boeing 777 is designed to be highly resilient to mechanical failures, and it is unlikely that a single failure would cause the aircraft to vanish without a distress signal. A third theory suggests that MH370 was the victim of a hijacking, possibly by terrorists or other individuals with a political motive. However, there were no demands for ransom, no claims of responsibility, and no evidence of a hijacking, such as a distress signal or a change in the flight's route that would indicate a hijacker's control. Additionally, the aircraft's passengers and crew had no known connections to terrorist organizations, and there was no indication that any dangerous items were on board. Some have speculated that the hijackers may have intended to fly the aircraft to a remote location, but there is no evidence that the aircraft landed anywhere. No airports reported an unauthorized landing, and no witnesses reported seeing the aircraft in remote areas. Other theories are more speculative, including the idea that the aircraft was shot down by a military missile, either accidentally or intentionally. Proponents of this theory point to the fact that MH370 was flying in an area with significant military activity, including exercises by the Malaysian and Thai militaries. However, no country has admitted to shooting down the aircraft, and there is no evidence of a missile strike. No debris suggests an explosion, and no radar data shows a missile being fired. Another theory suggests that the aircraft was abducted by extraterrestrials, a claim that has been widely dismissed by experts but has gained traction in popular culture. There is no scientific evidence to support this theory, and it is generally considered to be a fringe idea. In 2018, the Malaysian government released its final report on MH370, a 495-page document that summarized the investigation, but provided no definitive answers about the cause of the disappearance. The report concluded that the aircraft had ended in the southern Indian Ocean, but it could not determine the exact location of the main wreckage or the cause of the disappearance. The report listed several possible scenarios, including controlled flight into the ocean, suggesting a deliberate act by the pilot, and mechanical failure, but it did not endorse any single theory. The report also criticized the initial response to the disappearance, noting that delays in sharing information and coordinating search efforts had hindered the investigation. For the families of the missing, the report was a disappointment, as it failed to provide the closure they had been seeking for years. The disappearance of MH370 had a profound impact on the global aviation industry, leading to significant changes in aircraft tracking and safety protocols. Prior to MH370, commercial aircraft were only required to transmit their position periodically, and transponders could be turned off manually, making it possible for an aircraft to vanish from radar. In response to the tragedy, the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, implemented new regulations requiring all commercial aircraft to transmit their position every 15 minutes, even in remote areas. Additionally, new technology was developed to track aircraft in real time using satellite data, making it nearly impossible for a large commercial jet to vanish without a trace. These changes were designed to prevent future tragedies and ensure that families of missing passengers would have answers in the event of a disappearance. However, these changes came too late for the families of MH370 and MH2003, who continue to wait for closure. The human cost of these disappearances cannot be overstated. For the families of the 54 people on board MH2003, and the 239 people on board MH370. The years since the disappearances have been marked by grief, uncertainty, and frustration. Many families have campaigned tirelessly for more information, pushing governments and airlines to continue searching for the missing aircraft and providing answers about what happened. Some families have traveled to the areas where debris was found, hoping to find clues about the fate of their loved ones. Others have filed lawsuits against Malaysia Airlines and Boeing, seeking compensation and accountability. For many, the lack of closure has made it impossible to move on. They cannot grieve properly without knowing what happened to their loved ones, and they cannot find peace until the mystery is solved. The media coverage of MH370 was unprecedented, with news outlets around the world covering the story 24/7 for months after the disappearance. The coverage focused on the mystery of the vanished jet, the search efforts, and the stories of the missing passengers and crew. While this coverage helped to raise awareness about the tragedy and put pressure on governments to continue the search, it also led to the spread of misinformation and unsubstantiated theories, which added to the confusion and pain of the families. The media's focus on the most sensational theories, such as the pilot's alleged suicide or hijacking, often overshadowed the facts of the case and the needs of the families. In the years since, the media coverage has faded, but the mystery remains, and the families continue to fight for answers. Another important aspect of the Malaysian flight mysteries is the geopolitical context in which they occurred. The disappearance of MH370 took place at a time of heightened tensions in the Asia-Pacific region, with disputes over territorial claims in the South China Sea and strained relations between China and Malaysia. Some experts have suggested that these geopolitical tensions may have hindered the search effort, as countries were reluctant to share sensitive radar data or coordinate their search operations. Additionally, the fact that the majority of the passengers on MH370 were Chinese citizens put pressure on the Chinese government to play a leading role in the search, which led to tensions with the Malaysian government over the direction and scope of the search effort. These geopolitical factors highlight the challenges of conducting a global search operation in a region with complex political dynamics. The search for MH370 has also raised important questions about the limits of modern technology. Despite the availability of satellite data, radar systems, and advanced underwater search equipment, the main wreckage of MH370 has never been found. This has led experts to question whether current technology is sufficient to locate a crashed aircraft in remote areas of the ocean, and whether new technologies are needed to improve search and rescue efforts. In recent years, there have been advances in underwater mapping, satellite imaging, and artificial intelligence, which could help in future search operations. However, these technologies are expensive and require international cooperation, which can be difficult to achieve in the wake of a tragedy. In addition to the technical and geopolitical challenges, the investigation into MH370 has also been plagued by bureaucratic delays, miscommunication, and a lack of transparency. The Malaysian government has been criticized for its handling of the investigation, with many accusing it of withholding information, delaying the release of reports, and failing to coordinate effectively with other countries. The families of the missing have also accused the government of being insensitive to their needs, noting that they were often the last to be informed of new developments in the search. These criticisms have led to calls for greater transparency and accountability in aviation investigations, and for better support for the families of missing passengers. Despite the challenges, the search for MH370 has not been completely abandoned. In 2018, a private company called Ocean Infinity launched a new search operation, using advanced underwater vehicles to scan a larger area of the Indian Ocean. The search was funded by the Malaysian government, with a reward offered if the main wreckage was found. However, after several months of searching, Ocean Infinity announced that it had not found any trace of the aircraft, and the search was suspended once again. In 2023, nearly a decade after the disappearance, there were renewed calls for a new search based on new data and technology. Some experts have suggested that the main wreckage could be located in an area of the Indian Ocean that was not previously searched, and that new underwater mapping technology could help to locate it. However, no new search has been launched to date, and it remains unclear whether the mystery of MH370 will ever be solved. The story of MH2003, while less well known, is no less tragic. For the families of the 54 people on board, the mystery of their loved one's fate has lingered for more than 25 years. Unlike MH370, there have been no debris finds, no radar data to indicate a deviation from the route, and no new leads to guide a search. The official investigation into MH2003 was closed long ago, and there is little hope that new evidence will ever emerge. For these families, the pain of not knowing is compounded by the fact that their loved one's disappearance has been largely forgotten by the world. However, the families of MH2003 have not given up hope, and they continue to advocate for answers, even as the years pass. One of the most striking similarities between MH2003 and MH370 is the lack of closure for the families. In both cases, the absence of debris, bodies, and clear evidence has made it impossible for families to grieve properly or move on. For many, the uncertainty is worse than knowing the worst. They are stuck in a state of limbo, unable to accept the loss of their loved ones without proof of their deaths. This limbo has a profound psychological impact, leading to anxiety, depression, and a sense of powerlessness. Many families have sought counseling and support groups to cope with their grief, but the pain remains as the mystery continues to go unsolved. The Malaysian flight mysteries also raise important questions about the safety of commercial aviation While aviation is one of the safest forms of transportation, the disappearances of MH2003 and MH370 show that even the most advanced systems can fail, and that there are still gaps in our ability to track and locate aircraft. The changes implemented by the ICAO in the wake of MH370 have helped to improve aircraft tracking, but there is still more work to be done. For example, some experts have called for the development of a global tracking system that would allow aircraft to be tracked in real time, regardless of their location, and for black boxes to be equipped with satellite transmitters that would send their location even if the aircraft crashes into the ocean. These changes would make it much more difficult for a commercial jet to vanish without a trace, and would provide families with the closure they deserve. Another important question raised by the Malaysian flight mysteries is the responsibility of airlines and governments to support the families of missing passengers. In both cases, the families have accused Malaysia Airlines and the Malaysian government of being slow to respond, withholding information, and failing to provide adequate support. This has led to calls for better support systems for families of missing passengers, including financial assistance, counseling, and regular updates on the search and investigation. It has also led to calls for greater accountability, with airlines and governments being held responsible for ensuring that all possible efforts are made to find missing aircraft and provide answers to families. The impact of the Malaysian flight mysteries extends beyond the families of the missing and the aviation industry. These tragedies have captured the global imagination, sparking widespread interest in aviation safety, search and rescue technology, and the limits of human knowledge. They have also inspired books, documentaries, and films, all seeking to unravel the mysteries of MH2003 and MH370. These works have helped to keep the stories alive, ensuring that the missing are not forgotten, and that the search for answers continues. However, they have also contributed to the spread of misinformation and unsubstantiated theories, which can be harmful to the families of the missing. In the years since the disappearances, there have been numerous attempts to solve the mysteries of MH2003 and MH370. For MH370, these attempts have included analyzing satellite data, studying debris, and conducting underwater searches. For MH2003, there have been few new leads, but some experts have suggested that new technology could help to locate the aircraft's wreckage in the jungles or seas of Borneo. However, despite these efforts, both mysteries remain unsolved, and it is possible that they will never be fully explained. This uncertainty is a painful reminder of the fragility of life and the limits of human understanding. One of the most enduring legacies of the Malaysian flight mysteries is the way they have brought people together. The families of the missing, from different countries and cultures, have united in their quest for answers, supporting each other through their grief and advocating for greater transparency and accountability. The search for MH370 brought together more than 20 countries, demonstrating the power of international cooperation in the face of a tragedy. These examples of unity and resilience are a small comfort in the face of such great loss, and they remind us of the importance of compassion and solidarity in difficult times. As we reflect on the stories of MH2003 and MH370, we are reminded of the countless people who lost their lives in these tragedies, and of the families who continue to wait for answers. We are also reminded of the importance of aviation safety, of the need to continue investing in technology and infrastructure to prevent future tragedies, and of the responsibility we all have to support those who have lost loved ones. The mysteries of these vanished jets may never be fully solved, but they will continue to inspire us to ask questions, to seek the truth, and to remember those who were lost. To understand the full scope of the Malaysian flight mysteries, it is important to examine the technical details of the aircraft involved, the routes they were flying, and the conditions at the time of their disappearance. For MH2003, the Fokker 50 was a turboprop aircraft with a maximum takeoff weight of 28,500 kilograms, a cruising speed of 450 kilometers per hour, and a range of 1,500 kilometers. The flight from Kota Kinabalu to Kuching was a short route, covering approximately 700 kilometers, and the aircraft was carrying enough fuel to complete the journey with a comfortable margin. The weather on the day of the flight was clear, with visibility of more than 10 kilometers and no wind shear or turbulence reported. Pilot Captain Kamaruddin Ahmed was an experienced pilot with more than 10,000 hours of flying experience, and the co-pilot, First Officer Mode Zain Omar, had more than 2,000 hours of experience. There were no reports of mechanical issues with the aircraft before the flight, and the pre-flight check was completed without incident. All of these factors suggest that the disappearance of MH2003 was not due to pilot error or mechanical failure, but something more mysterious. For MH370, the Boeing 777-200ER was a state-of-the-art aircraft with a maximum takeoff weight of 297,550 kilograms, a cruising speed of 900 kilometers per hour, and a range of 14,260 kilometers. The flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing was a long-haul route, covering approximately 4,500 kilometers, and the aircraft was carrying enough fuel to complete the journey with a margin of several hours. The aircraft had undergone a routine maintenance check just 2 days before the flight, and no mechanical issues were reported. The pilot, Captain Zahiri Ahmed Shah, was one of Malaysia Airlines' most experienced pilots, with more than 18,000 hours of flying experience on the Boeing 777. He had a clean record, with no history of accidents, violations, or mental health issues. The co-pilot, First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, was a relatively new pilot, but he had completed all required training and had no known issues. The aircraft was carrying 227 passengers, including 153 Chinese citizens, 38 Malaysians, and 36 passengers from other countries, as well as 12 crew members. The passengers included businessmen, tourists, families, and a group of 24 Chinese artists returning from a cultural exchange in Malaysia. The diversity of the passengers highlighted the global impact of the tragedy, as people from all over the world were affected by the disappearance. The radar data for MH370 is a critical piece of evidence, as it provides insight into the aircraft's movements after it vanished from civilian radar. Military radar tracked the aircraft for several hours after the transponder was turned off, showing that it made a sharp left turn over the Malay Peninsula, flying west toward the Strait of Malacca. The aircraft then climbed to 45,000 feet, higher than its cruising altitude, before descending to 23,000 feet. This altitude change has led some experts to speculate that the crew was trying to avoid radar detection, or that there was a mechanical issue. The aircraft then flew south over the Indian Ocean, gradually descending until it disappeared from radar at approximately 2:22 a.m. The radar data also shows that the aircraft was flying at a constant speed and altitude during this time, suggesting that it was under control either by the pilots or by someone else. This has led to the theory that the disappearance was a deliberate act rather than an accident. The satellite data for MH370 is another important piece of evidence. While the aircraft's transponder was turned off, it continued to send periodic signals to a satellite operated by Inmarsat, a British satellite communications company. These signals, known as handshakes, provided information about the aircraft's location relative to the satellite, but not its exact position. By analyzing these handshakes, investigators were able to determine that the aircraft had flown south over the Indian Ocean and had crashed in an area known as the Seventh Arc, a 1,500-kilometer-long arc in the southern Indian Ocean. This area is one of the deepest parts of the ocean, with depths of up to 7,000 meters, making it extremely difficult to search. The satellite data also showed that the aircraft's engines were running until the final handshake, which occurred at approximately 8:19 a.m. local time, more than 7 hours after the flight departed Kuala Lumpur. This suggests that the aircraft was in flight for a long time after it vanished from radar, which supports the theory that it was under control. The debris found from MH370 has provided some clues, but not enough to solve the mystery. The first piece of debris, the flaperon found on Reunion Island, was identified using serial numbers and other markings, confirming that it came from MH370. Other debris pieces, including a wing fragment, a horizontal stabilizer, and personal items such as a suitcase and a passenger's shoe, have also been found. However, none of these debris pieces provide information about the cause of the disappearance or the location of the main wreckage. The debris has been scattered across thousands of kilometers of coastline, which suggests that the aircraft broke up into small pieces when it crashed into the ocean, and that the debris was carried by ocean currents to the coasts of various Indian Ocean islands. The investigation into MH370 has also focused on the pilot's background and behavior. Captain Zahiri Ahmed Shah was a passionate pilot who loved flying, and he had built a flight simulator in his home. Investigators examined the simulator's data and found that Captain Zahiri had practiced landing procedures on several remote islands in the Indian Ocean, including Diego Garcia, a British Indian Ocean territory. This has led to speculation that he had planned to fly the aircraft to one of these islands, but there is no evidence that he actually did so. Investigators also found that Captain Zahiri had no financial or personal problems, and that he had a good relationship with his family and colleagues. There is no evidence that he was suicidal or that he had any motive to hijack the aircraft. The co-pilot, First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, was also investigated, but there is no evidence that he was involved in any deliberate act. He had a clean record, and his friends and colleagues described him as a responsible and dedicated pilot. Another area of investigation has been the aircraft's cargo. MH370 was carrying approximately 200 kilograms of lithium-ion batteries, which are known to be flammable. Some experts have suggested that a fire caused by the batteries could have incapacitated the crew and caused the aircraft to crash. However, there is no evidence to support this theory. No debris found suggests a fire, and the aircraft's engines were functioning normally until the final handshake. Additionally, lithium-ion batteries are commonly carried on commercial flights, and there have been no other incidents where they caused a catastrophic fire, leading to the disappearance of an aircraft. The role of cybersecurity in the disappearance of MH370 has also been explored. Some experts have suggested that the aircraft systems could have been hacked, allowing someone to take control of the aircraft and turn off the transponder and communication systems. However, there is no evidence to support this theory, and the Boeing 777 systems are designed to be highly secure, with multiple layers of protection against hacking. Additionally, there is no known case of a commercial aircraft being hacked and hijacked in this way. The disappearance of MH370 has also led to a re-examination of other aviation mysteries. For example, the disappearance of Amelia Earhart in 1937, the disappearance of Pan AM Flight 7 in 1957, and the disappearance of Air France Flight 447 in 2009. While Air France Flight 447 was eventually found, its disappearance for several years highlighted the challenges of searching for a crashed aircraft in remote areas of the ocean. The lessons learned from these mysteries have helped to improve search and rescue techniques and aircraft tracking systems. But the disappearance of MH370 shows that there is still much to learn. For the families of the missing, the years since the disappearances have been filled with pain, frustration, and hope. Many families have organized vigils, protests, and fundraisers to keep the search alive and to pressure governments and airlines to provide answers. Some families have traveled to the areas where debris was found, hoping to find clues about their loved one's fate. Others have written letters to world leaders, asking for their support in continuing the search. Despite the passage of time, the families have not given up hope, and they continue to believe that the mystery will one day be solved. The Malaysian government has faced significant criticism for its handling of both MH2003 and MH370. In the case of MH2003, the government was accused of not conducting a thorough search and of closing the investigation too soon. In the case of MH370, the government was criticized for delaying the release of information, failing to coordinate effectively with other countries, and not doing enough to support the families of the missing. In response to this criticism, the Malaysian government has implemented several reforms, including improving its search and rescue capabilities, enhancing aircraft tracking systems, and providing better support for families of missing passengers. However, many families feel that these reforms are too little, too late, and that the government has not done enough to find the missing aircraft and provide answers. The aviation industry has also made significant changes in the wake of MH370. As mentioned earlier, the ICAO has implemented new regulations requiring all commercial aircraft to transmit their position every 15 minutes, even in remote areas. Additionally, aircraft manufacturers have begun to equip new aircraft with real-time tracking systems that use satellite data to monitor the aircraft's location at all times. Black boxes are also being improved with new technology that allows them to send their location via satellite, even if they are submerged in water. These changes are designed to prevent future tragedies and ensure that families of missing passengers have answers in the event of a disappearance. Despite these changes, there are still gaps in aviation safety that need to be addressed. For example, many older aircraft do not have the new tracking systems, and it will take years to retrofit them. Additionally, there is no global standard for real-time tracking, and some countries have been slow to adopt the new regulations. There is also a need for better coordination between countries in search and rescue operations. As the search for MH370 showed that communication and cooperation between different nations can be challenging, the mystery of the Malaysian flight disappearances is not just a story about aviation. It is a story about human nature, about our need for answers, and about our ability to cope with uncertainty. It is a story about the fragility of life and the limits of human knowledge, and it is a story that will continue to captivate and intrigue the world for years to come. While the mysteries of MH2003 and MH370 may never be fully solved, they They remind us of the importance of cherishing our loved ones, of supporting those who are grieving, and of striving for a safer, more transparent world. As we look to the future, there is hope that new technology and new discoveries will help to solve these mysteries. For MH370, new underwater mapping technology and artificial intelligence could help to locate the main wreckage, and new analysis of satellite data could provide more clues about the aircraft's final moments. For MH2003, new aerial surveys of the jungles and seas of Borneo could help to find the aircraft's wreckage, which may have been hidden by vegetation or sediment over the years. While the odds of finding the missing aircraft are slim, the families of the missing and the global community continue to hold out hope that one day the truth will be revealed. In the end, the Malaysian flight mysteries are a reminder that even in an age of advanced technology, there are still things we cannot explain. They are a reminder that life is unpredictable and that we must cherish every moment with our loved ones. They are also a reminder of the importance of perseverance, of never giving up hope, and of working together to find answers. The vanished jets of Malaysia Airlines may never be found, but the stories of those who were on board will live on, a testament to the power of human life and the enduring search for truth. To further explore the impact of these mysteries, it is important to consider the effect they have had on the families of the missing. For many, the years of uncertainty have taken a heavy toll on their mental health and well-being. They have had to cope with the loss of their loved ones without the closure that comes with a funeral or a confirmed death. Many have experienced anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and they have had to rely on counseling and support groups to cope. The families have also had to navigate a complex web of bureaucracy, dealing with airlines, governments, and insurance companies, which has added to their stress and frustration. Despite these challenges, many families have found strength in each other, forming support groups and advocating for change to ensure that no other family has to go through what they have. The Malaysian flight mysteries have also had a significant impact on the tourism industry in Malaysia. In the wake of MH370, Malaysia Airlines saw a sharp decline in bookings as passengers became concerned about the airline's safety. The airline was already facing financial difficulties before the disappearance, and the tragedy only made things worse. In 2014, Malaysia Airlines was restructured, with the government taking over the airline and cutting jobs and routes to reduce costs. While the airline has since recovered somewhat, the impact of MH370 is still felt, and it remains a reminder of the challenges facing the aviation industry. Another important aspect of the Malaysian flight mysteries is the way they have inspired scientific research and innovation. The search for MH370 has led to advances in underwater mapping, satellite imaging, and search and rescue technology. For example, Ocean Infinity's search operation used autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, that can scan the seabed at depths of up to 6,000 meters, collecting high-resolution images of the ocean floor. These AUVs are now being used in other search and rescue operations, as well as in scientific research to explore the deep ocean. The analysis of satellite data from MH370 has also led to improvements in satellite tracking technology, which is now being used to track other aircraft and ships around the world. The Malaysian flight mysteries have also sparked a global conversation about aviation safety and accountability. Governments, airlines, and aircraft manufacturers have been forced to re-examine their safety protocols and to make changes to prevent future tragedies. The ICAO's new tracking regulations are just one example of this, and there are ongoing efforts to improve aircraft safety and search and rescue capabilities. These changes are not just about preventing future disappearances. They are about ensuring that families of missing passengers have the answers they deserve, and that the aviation industry is held accountable for the safety of its passengers and crew. As we reflect on the stories of MH2003 and MH370, we are reminded of the countless lives that were lost and of the families who continue to wait for answers. We are also reminded of the importance of hope, of perseverance, and of the power of human connection. The mysteries of these vanished jets may never be fully solved, but they will continue to inspire us to ask questions, to seek the truth, and to remember those who were lost. In the end, it is the memory of these people that keeps the search alive, and it is their stories that remind us of the fragility and preciousness of life. In conclusion, the Malaysian flight mysteries, MH2003 and MH370, are two of the most puzzling and tragic events in aviation history. Both flights vanished without trace, leaving behind a trail of confusion, grief, and unanswered questions that persist to this day. The lack of evidence, the conflicting theories, and the geopolitical challenges have made it nearly impossible to determine the exact cause of these disappearances. However, the stories of these vanished jets have had a profound impact on the aviation industry, on the families of the missing, and on the global consciousness. They have led to important changes in aircraft tracking and safety protocols, inspired scientific research and innovation, and sparked a global conversation about accountability and transparency. While the mysteries may never be fully solved, the memory of those who were lost will continue to live on, and the search for answers will continue. For the families of the missing, the hope of finding their loved ones and uncovering the truth remains alive, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. The story of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 and MH2003 is not just a story of vanished jets. It is a story of human loss, resilience, and the unyielding quest for truth. It is a story that reminds us of the limits of our knowledge, the fragility of our technology, and the importance of compassion and solidarity. As we continue to grapple with these mysteries, we honor the memory of those who were lost, and we commit to doing everything in our power to prevent future tragedies. The vanished jets of Malaysia Airlines may be gone, but their legacy will live on, a reminder of the importance of never giving up hope, even in the face of the greatest uncertainty. To fully understand the complexity of these mysteries, it is important to consider all the factors that contributed to the disappearances, from the technical details of the aircraft to the human behavior of the pilots and crew, from the geopolitical context to the limitations of modern technology. Each piece of evidence, each theory, and each personal story adds to the tapestry of these mysteries, helping us to get closer to the truth, even if we never fully reach it. The Malaysian flight mysteries are a reminder that some questions may never be answered, but that does not mean we should stop asking them. It is through our curiosity, our perseverance, and our compassion that we honor those who were lost and ensure that their stories are never forgotten. As time passes, the world may move on, but the families of the missing will never forget. For them, the search for answers is not just a quest for closure. It is a way to keep the memory of their loved ones alive. The Malaysian flight mysteries are a testament to the enduring power of love and hope, and they remind us that even in the darkest of times, there is always a glimmer of light. The vanished jets may never be found, but the love and memories of those who were on board will continue to shine, a beacon of hope in the face of uncertainty. In the years to come, new technology may emerge that helps to solve these mysteries. New discoveries may be made, new evidence may be found, and new theories may be proposed. Until then, we must continue to remember those who were lost, to support their families, and to strive for a safer, more transparent world. The Malaysian flight mysteries are a part of our global history, a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of seeking the truth. They are a story that will continue to captivate and inspire us for generations to come. The disappearance of MH370 and MH2003 has also raised important ethical questions about the role of the media, the responsibility of governments, and the rights of the families of missing passengers. The media's coverage of these tragedies has often been sensationalized, focusing on the most dramatic theories and ignoring the needs of the families. Governments have been accused of putting political interests above the search for the missing, and of withholding information that could help solve the mysteries. The families of the missing have been denied the right to closure, and they have been forced to fight for answers that should have been provided to them from the start. These ethical questions are important as they remind us of the need for compassion, transparency, and accountability in the face of tragedy. Another important ethical consideration is the impact of the mysteries on the families of the missing. Many families have been forced to relive their grief every time a new theory is proposed or a new piece of debris is found. They have been subjected to media scrutiny, online harassment, and false information, which has added to their pain. It is important that we respect the privacy and dignity of these families and that we support them in their quest for closure. We must also ensure that the search for answers is conducted in a way that is respectful of the missing and their families, and that it does not exploit their grief for personal or political gain. The Malaysian flight mysteries have also had a significant impact on the mental health of the families of the missing. Many have experienced depression, anxiety, and PTSD, and they have struggled to cope with the uncertainty of not knowing what happened to their loved ones. It is important that these families have access to counseling and support services, and that they are not left to cope alone. Governments and airlines have a responsibility to provide this support and to ensure that the families are treated with compassion and respect. In addition to the ethical considerations, the Malaysian flight mysteries have also raised important legal questions. The families of the missing have filed lawsuits against Malaysia Airlines, Boeing, and other parties, seeking compensation and accountability. These lawsuits have raised questions about the liability of airlines and aircraft manufacturers in cases of aircraft disappearance, and about the rights of families to seek justice. The legal proceedings have been long and complex, and they have highlighted the need for clearer laws and regulations governing aviation safety and accountability. The Malaysian flight mysteries are a reminder that aviation safety is a shared responsibility. Governments, airlines, aircraft manufacturers, and passengers all have a role to play in ensuring that air travel is safe. Governments must enforce strict safety regulations. Airlines must maintain their aircraft and train their crew properly. Aircraft manufacturers must design safe and reliable aircraft, and passengers must be aware of the risks and take appropriate precautions. By working together, we can prevent future tragedies and ensure that the families of missing passengers have the answers they deserve. As we look to the future, it is important that we continue to invest in aviation safety and search and rescue technology. We must also continue to support the families of the missing and to honor the memory of those who were lost. The Malaysian flight mysteries may never be fully solved, but they have taught us valuable lessons about the importance of perseverance, compassion, and transparency. They have also reminded us of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing every moment with our loved ones. In the end, the story of the Malaysian flight mysteries is a story of hope. It is a story of families who refuse to give up, of experts who continue to search for answers, and of a global community that comes together in the face of tragedy. It is a story that reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope for the future. The vanished jets of Malaysia Airlines may be gone, but their legacy will live on, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit.